Welcome to the Rocky Mount Area Chamber Buzz. Today's guests are Kirk Scott, Executive Director of the Christian Fellowship Home for Men here in Rocky Mount, and also Don Williams, President of Lewis Advertising and a wonderful volunteer. Our show is proudly brought to you by Roger G. Taylor and Associates to share with you some of the great things happening in the Twin County area for Chamber members and for the community at large. Let's take a look at some of the recent activities.
Our Department of Health and Human Services has a totally broken down system of operations. Today, I stood with Democratic State Auditor Beth Wood and embraced an audit that they've had, that they did between the years of 2009 and 2012, in which they basically said the operations of Medicaid in North Carolina are broken. We're spending almost more money for administrative costs than 90% of the states in the United States of America. Every penny we spend on administration cost is money that we're taking out of people that desperately need this Medicaid. And we're going to solve that problem. So I stood next to Beth Wood as she made the announcement of this audit, which was highly critical of how we've been implementing this government operation in the state of North Carolina for a long, long time. And my Secretary of Health and Human Services, Aldona Voss, stood there also with me and said, we are going to fix it. Because the more money we spend on administration, the less money the people in need are getting. We want to help those people in need, but we need to implement efficient operations, get rid of the fraud, and we need to start doing it today. The status quo is no longer acceptable here in North Carolina. Let me talk about some long-term issues that we're dealing with, and I'm being very frank with you. Right now, if we want to continue to build, if we want to build the economy here in Rocky Mount, or in Guilford County, or in Wake County, or in Greenville, anywhere in North Carolina, we're going to have to update and reform our tax system in North Carolina. Because Bob McDonnell in Virginia, and Nikki Haley in South Carolina, and Bill Haslam, the governor of Tennessee, are doing everything they can to steal business from North Carolina. It's kind of like the way the business is right now. Business is not growing unless you steal from someone else. That's the kind of stagnant economy that we're in right now. The way you grow is you take it from someone else. And that's exactly what other states are attempting to do to North Carolina. I don't plan to lose to Bill Haslam in Tennessee or Nikki Haley in South Carolina or Bob McDonnell. They're all good friends. We're going to compete against them.
We are so happy to welcome Kirk Scott, Executive Director of the Christian Fellowship Home for Men.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Don Williams, who is the President of Lewis Advertising, but also a volunteer in just about everything. So welcome, Don. Glad to have you both here. Kirk, recently we had our 4th annual telethon to raise money for the Christian Fellowship Home for Men. And wow, what another success this community gave us.
Well, it was really gratifying. The total so far, we've raised a little over $15,000 for that 4-hour telethon. And it's just remarkable when you think of the philanthropic giving that our community has, the people in Rocky Mount and Nash and Edgecombe counties. It's really an amazing thing. And one thing I would like to make sure that everyone understands is that the two great minds that were the genesis of our telethon are sitting right here. That was Don and Jean. You were both the ones who actually came up with the idea. I believe it was your idea. And then Don, you just took the ball and ran with it for the 4 years. So without the two of you, there wouldn't be a Christian Fellowship Home Telethon.
Well,
so I want to publicly acknowledge that and tell you thank you from all of us.
You are so welcome, but without you, the leadership to make it the success that it is, and I think it's incumbent for, in case people don't know what the Christian Fellowship Home for Men actually does, share the story with us.
Well, I'm glad to do that because you're right. We're one of the best kept secrets in the community. We're a 38-year-old halfway house program. We're a program designed to help newly recovered men who have addiction problems get back on their feet and resume a responsible and productive place in society. The agency was started 38 years ago by some local businessmen. Mr. J.B. Thomason, who was a local businessman in Nashville, Mr. J.T. Stone Sr., Bill Pitt. These were the men who themselves had gone through that process of rehabilitation, had learned the value of staying sober, and wanted to share that with the community, and that was how Christian Fellowship Home for Men was born.
Well, and you also, and I'm not betraying any secret here, but you have a recovery situation, so you're...
Yes, I'm proud to say that one of the reasons I believe that I feel so strongly about promoting the mission of Christian Fellowship is because I went there myself in 1993. I walked through the front door there just about beaten down from my own addictive issues. And I don't think that without the help and support that I found there, that I would have had a shot at a decent life. So I maybe have a little more invested in the program than most people do, but that's one of the reasons why I'm proud to work there and just really happy to have the responsibility of trying to keep it going so that that program will be available for the next generation of Rocky Mountain, Nash, and Edgecombe County men who may need it.
And from what I hear, the money that's been raised from the telethon the last 4 years has provided the operating capital. You're solid. You're here. I think, Don, we're in this for the long run. I think there's going to be,
well, hopefully.
You know, I could see us now 20 years from now. Well, it's time for the annual telethon.
As we sit in our wheelchairs, we'll be going, it's time for the telethon.
Don.
But it is true, Gene, and that money that we raised from the telethon, it has helped primarily because of the economic situation in our area. You know, when times are good and jobs are available, our men can get out and work and contribute a lot more to their support than they're able to do in these types of economic times.
And want to, because it's a rebuild the lives, it's
yes.
Get jobs, it's get them out in the workforce.
Well, it's one of the tenets of our program that a man has to turn his hand to something. And even if he's unable to work, say he's too physically infirm or he's on disability and can't work, then there's volunteer work. One of the principles we try to teach the men is that you need to turn your hand to something during the day, even if it's just volunteer work. But a man has to do something.
Don.
Yes, ma'am.
When you got involved, what led to your getting involved?
Well, actually, it was a client, Davenport Auto Park. Neil Nelson was involved. Neil and Lisa had already jumped on board and invited me to get involved, and my son Clint was involved, and so we sort of made it a practice. That first couple of years, we worked it as a Williams duo, trying to help get things up and running. And we've just continued it on since then. But it's a story that a lot of people don't know about in Rocky Mount. It's the Christian Fellowship Home for Men is a United Way agency.
That's correct.
And is supported by United Way. It's involved in some very beneficial things in the community, one being the food bank. And Kirk, tell us about the food bank and what you all do there, because I think that's part of that volunteer
well,
project
it is.
of yours.
We try to convince the men that if they're going to be members of a community, they have to give back to the community in some way. And there's many ways of doing that. But for many years, we have been an agency for the food bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina. In fact, we were one of the first agencies to sign up with the food bank to be a food bank agency. Well, what that does is that gives us a linkage to a resource, a daily donation of food from the Nashville Food Line, store number 1566. And we take that product, which is dated to go out of the store that day. These are sell-by dates, by the way, not use-by dates, so the food is perfectly safe. And then we sort it, we store it, we organize it, and then once a month we have a food pantry where we invite all the residents of our neighborhood in Rocky Mount, the South Rocky Mount and Villa Place neighborhoods, to come to our place and pick up bags of food. And it does two things. It puts the halfway house program in a good light with the people in the community that it's located in. And it also gives our men an opportunity to do something to demonstrate that they're willing to give back to the community.
And people line up. I think the food distribution starts at 10 o'clock, but they're there. People are lining up at 7:30, aren't they?
Well, it's become sort of like a social event for our
Oh,
neighborhood.
okay.
So people come very early. They bring their lawn chairs. The seniors are there in their walkers and wheelchairs, and everybody just sort of camps out in the backyard for a couple of hours until the event starts. So it's really not just a economic program, but it's kind of a social program too.
But I think it's character building for people to volunteer, to know that we're not just going to take from the community. We want to give back in a public service manner.
Well, I think that's extremely important. It really is.
I think one of the things that most intrigues me about the telethon is your name is Christian Fellowship Home for Men, is the number of pastors of the leading churches in the community who get involved with us in the telethon. Jean, can you maybe tell us some about that?
There are a number of churches who have appeared regularly on the telethon because we're in their budget. And I say we, the Christian Fellowship Home, we've all kind of adopted it and we feel like we're part of it now.
Well, you are.
But they perform. We have choirs coming. Word Tabernacle came, and of course, not a church, but church affiliate, North Carolina Wesleyan's choir comes. It's just amazing the way the churches come. Pastor Gaylor is a co-host, Pastor James Gaylor of Word Tabernacle. Richard Joyner from Canida.
Larry Curtis from First Baptist, he's on our board of directors.
Jody Wright.
Jody Wright has always been a big supporter.
Regularly comes.
One of the big principles in recovery, Gene, is to find a spiritual path. We're so fortunate in Rocky Mount that we have such great church families, so that any man who comes to our home, we can steer him towards a church family without any problem whatsoever. We're kind of like a spiritual kindergarten. It's my task to make sure that the men understand that they need a spiritual path in life, and then hopefully they can link up with some of our great area church fellowships to refine and follow that path.
And I want to mention Inglewood Baptist also has been a regular supporter. We need to take a break, and we'll continue this when we come back. Stay with us, please.
We are the past,
present,
and the future leadership of your Chamber of Commerce.
we are business members focusing on new beginnings, boldly creating our Twin Counties future.
members working toward broader thinking, community reinvestment, and public policy supporting strong business.
We are partnerships that create new beginnings.
We are business and community leaders working together for a better tomorrow.
And this is my time.
We're back with Kirk Scott, Christian Fellowship Home for Men, Executive Director, and Don Williams, Lewis Advertising, President. We do want to thank, though, Roger G. Taylor and Associates for sponsoring this show. It's important to our community for us to see good people doing good things, and I really feel like this show fulfills that mission, so y'all are certainly a great example of that. Kurt, if there are people watching now who are thinking, gosh, I didn't get to see the telethon, I will watch it next year, but what are some of the ongoing needs and ways that our community can be of assistance?
Well, people ask me that all the time, Jane, and to be honest with you, to get serious here for a moment, the most critical need that my men have is not for anything material at all, it's for mentoring. What we need are responsible men who can come in and sort of model that responsibility and that masculine maturity to the men. Mm-hmm. Because so many of the men that come through the home are from disrupted family situations. Many of them have never even known a father in their personal life. Mm-hmm. So I think mentoring for the men and role modeling for the men, that is probably the number one need. Now, on a physical level, just think of all the things you need to run your own home. And that gives you basic necessities. That gives you a good idea of the types of things that people donate to us. Mm-hmm. The people at the Family Medical Center, they have made it a project to donate a lot of the basic necessities to us: paper goods, laundry detergent, toiletries for the men. We have a wonderful link with the second season with Melody at the second season. they often get men's clothing in for donations, which they don't sell at the thrift store, so they pass those along to us.
I want to interject one thing at this point, just to really undermine or undergird, not undermine, but undergird what you're saying. They're so appreciative. I mean, we had people, Amanda Bell from Rocky Mount Family Medical came on the telethon, and she said when she gave basic necessities to the men, she's never seen such gratitude. I mean, she said that there were just tears in people's eyes with, it means that much that somebody, and that you all in the community care that much about your fellow man.
Well, it does, and to a great degree, the problem of substance abuse is still a little bit stigmatized in our culture. People still see it as a moral issue instead of a real medical problem. And many times, by the time a man gets to the point where he wants to or has to go to a halfway house, he's just about lost everything, including, in my case, his shoes. So the basic necessities for the men who are there early, who are men who are just getting there, are really, really critical. It really, really critical.
What's the time length a resident stays at the home?
Well,
on average.
we're extremely open-ended on that, Don, and the reason is because recovery from substance abuse is a very individualized thing. The circumstances vary between each individual. I'm going to try to convince each resident that comes in to make a commitment to stay there for a year. It's a medium-range rehabilitation program. But, of course, given the nature of the situation, many of the guys don't make it that long. If you had to just average the length of stay, it would probably be about 4 months. But we have had members who have stayed there much longer than that. One of my staff members, for instance, who's very active in a recovery program at Inglewood Baptist, he's marked his 2-year anniversary there. Recovery from substance abuse is a little like recovery from a stroke. It takes about a year for the brain to really heal. So we try to encourage everybody to stay at least a year. But the average is about 4 months.
And they attend AA meetings or NA meetings. I mean, that's part of the commitment too, isn't it?
That's correct. Now, we don't dictate to them where they're to go or how many times a week they're to go. They come up with that plan. And then once they say, well, I'm going to go to, say, 3 recovery fellowship meetings a week, then it's my job and the staff's job to monitor to see if they're really doing the things that they contracted to do when they came in.
Don, I remember when we first started this, we were looking for some in-kind donations, and remember Davenport as well as the hospital, what they gave?
Well, gave a vehicle for you to
That's correct.
Get your guys to the meetings, to work job sites and that sort of thing.
In fact, we got 2 vehicles donated that year. Ms. Sydney Bass from Momeyer also donated us one too, a utility vehicle that we use for our running around. And it would not be possible without the generosity and support of the Rocky Mountain, Nash, and Edgecombe County community for a nonprofit like ours to survive. We're very small. We have a $100,000 a year annual budget. For that, we pay 2 full-time staff salaries, 2 part-time staff salaries, and house, feed, and care for up to 13 residents, 24/7. So that's not a big budget to accomplish all those ends. And if it weren't for the generosity of the community, nonprofits like ours just wouldn't survive.
In fact, a lot of the homes like yours have gone away in the past 10 years.
There are several in this part of the state that have folded. Even some of the smaller recovery homes in Rocky Mount. Our Oxford House program here, we used to have 3 Oxford houses. These were smaller versions of the fellowship home, organized around 6 to 8 residents who kind of banded together and ran the home as a co-op. All of those are gone now. It's a symptom of the economic times. It really is. But we need more facilities like this.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you have to turn away people for lack of
We do.
space?
I report every year to United Way the number of applicants who could not be admitted, and it's quite a large number. So even more beds like this that could help men in early recovery re-socialize and get back into life, they'd be very needed in our area.
Involved in the telethon through the years have been people from all socioeconomic groups too, talking about trying to create for us the awareness that addiction knows no bounds as far as it can be young, old. I think you said at one point it used to be older men who were alcoholics, but now it's young drug abusers. I mean, it's across the board.
It has become what I refer to as an equal opportunity disease because it can strike anyone.
Yeah.
And you're right, over the years that we've been operating, there's been a great shift in demographics for our program. When I came to the fellowship home in '93, by far and away, it was older white men, probably 40 years old and above. They had a diagnosis of alcoholism, but no mental health diagnosis. They were usually people who had some sort of work skill or work history or work trade. And now the picture is completely different. 20 years later, that picture is completely different. Most of our residents now are under 30 years old.
Really?
Most of them are minority people. They have mental health diagnoses as well as the substance abuse diagnoses, and they come from broken family backgrounds, interrupted educational backgrounds, very poor work history backgrounds. So you need a lot more resources to get the men we have now up and running than you used to.
Well, I think it's so incumbent upon our community to continue rebuilding lives. I think a lot of that came through at the telethon, that it's not just taking care of them, it put a Band-Aid on anything. You are actually changing their whole lives, and by changing their lives, you're changing their family lives. All the people who love them, all the people who have associations with them. So I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that there are very few families who haven't been touched by some relative somewhere who's had a substance abuse issue.
That's true, very few.
And you'll take in-kind items also?
Yes, we can find a use for anything, Jane. We are not picky. And what we can't use directly, we will pass along to the community, our food pantry. We do that with the extra clothes we get and with the other extra items we get. So.
And you are at the corner of Grace and
Nash Street.
And can people just come by and drop off stuff?
They can. We have people there usually all the time, but if you want to be sure that a staff member is there, just call ahead. But we'll be glad to take anything we can get.
And I can tell you, and Don, I'd like for you to chip in here, I have never seen a more grateful group of men. They watched the telethon. One of them even called in to say thank you and God bless you, and it's heartwarming, isn't it?
Oh, yes, yes. I think you're going to get a great deal of quiet satisfaction from helping the Christian Fellowship Home for Men, because they're not going to be able to go out and scream and yell. They don't have the numbers, they don't have the voice, but just what you're doing for those 13 residents right now that's life-saving. That's
sure
life-changing.
It sure makes a difference for those men, and they are very appreciative of it.
And if we help them, then we're helping our community at large, too.
That's correct. Many of them stay here and get jobs and decide to make their life here in Rocky Mount. So.
Super. Kurt, Don, thank you.
Thank you, G.
Thank you. Please join us next week.
We are the past,
present,
and the future leadership of your Chamber of Commerce.
We are business members focusing on new beginnings, boldly creating our Twin Counties future.
members working toward broader thinking, community reinvestment, and public policy supporting strong business.
We are partnerships that create new beginnings.
We are business and community leaders working together for a better tomorrow.
And this is my time.